Welcome to the Way Left podcast. We're going to do the Save America Act, which a lot of people are referring to as the SAVE Act. This is relative to voter registration and IDs associated with registration. I wanted to get to this because it's been a hot topic. I don't think it's going to be passed, and there's a lot of reasons for that, and who's pushing it and who's not. So let's read it. The Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, SAVE, H.R. 8281/S4292, aims to amend the National Voter Registration Act of 1993 to require individuals to provide documentary proof of U.S. citizenship when registering to vote in federal elections. It mandates states to establish verification programs, remove non-citizens from voter rolls, and allow for a private right of action against officials failing to enforce these rules. So, this is with federal elections, and what it's doing is it's mandating certain types of ID requirements. And so let's go through the key details of the SAVE Act. Proof of citizenship. Voters must present documents like a passport, birth certificate, or photo ID, which would be the real ID indicating citizenship to register. Now, a driver's license is not proof of citizenship, just so we understand. You would need a stepped up real ID, which you would then have to verify with the birth certificate. Purpose. The bill aims to ensure only U.S. citizens are registered to vote, addressing concerns about non-citizen voting in federal elections. Impact on registration. It would likely restrict online and mail-in registration. So we're not going to use electronics, and we're not going to use mail-in voting anymore on the federal level, requiring in-person documentation for most voters. So you got to bring, if you don't have a passport, you need to bring your birth certificate or some sort of ID that has already confirmed your birth certificate. Challenges. Critics suggest it could burden eligible voters who lack immediate access to birth certificates or passports, an estimated 21 million voters. Exceptions. Some proposals allow for alternative state-verified evidence if a birth certificate or passport is not available. The proposed Voting SAVE Act has faced criticism over its potential to disproportionately affect married women who have changed their names and lack matching citizenship documentation. Okay, so that's the SAVE Act. Who is this being pushed by? It's being pushed by the right, Trump, and I'll get to some of his quotes. It's being fought on the left. So let's get to a few bases here. The first basis, I think it's less than 50%, and we could probably look it up right now, of people in the United States have a passport, a valid passport. So I have a passport that proves my citizenship of the United States, and it's valid. So over 50% don't have passports. So that's the first issue. Second issue, we're trying to get rid of mail-in registration or any type of electronic voting. So the year is 2026. What we're trying to do is we're trying to eliminate technology because that can be hacked by non-citizens or citizens who are trying to be nefarious. And we don't want mail-in voting because that would say that you could scam the system and not be a citizen. Okay. So what are the other hindrances here? So for example, it's over 30 countries in the world that allow, and first world countries mostly, that allow mail-in voting, right? So therefore, it is a proved out system. There are tons of countries, and I don't know what the number is, using some sort of electronic filing system. The other thing that countries do, and this is a unique thought. I mean, we have holidays for, God, I think Donald Trump wants to do his own holiday. I think it's 50 to 100 countries, they have national holidays for voting. So I have proposed that, yes, I would like a voter ID law if that's where you want to go. But we still allow mail-in voting. We create electronic e-verification like we do with this is back to immigration, where we do corporations e-verifying legal citizens, if that's what we're really worried about. We'll talk about the stats in a second. That e-verification for me to mail in vote would be confirmation of my birth certificate and or my my passport and or my valid ID that has proved that I'm a citizen. That doesn't have to be done in person. It should be all electronic. So we should have a national holiday. I think we should have a voting day. If you want to get rid of mail-in voting, okay, fine. Then use Saturday, Sunday. This is the first Saturday. The first Sunday are voting days. You create more polls, right? So you have polls that are around polling stations, more polling stations. You have Monday as a national holiday and Tuesday as a national holiday. So you have 4 days to vote in person with valid ID if you want to get rid of mail-in voting. Or in a sense, you should still have national holiday Monday and Tuesday to vote in person no matter what. And if you want valid ID certification, then we need to automate the process to be valid, so to get a valid ID. So for example, I changed my name. I should be able to electronically go into the state. I have a passport. I can validate that. I can get a new passport. I can go to the Fed. I have a birth certificate that's put an amendment on there that my name is not Brian Vitello anymore. It's Brian Jones, because I like the Rolling Stones. Brian Jones and the Rolling Stones. Or if I get married, and mostly it's women, but let's say I get married and I decide to change my name. And I know a lot of people say that's woke, but let me remind you, I'm the wokest progressive leftist motherfucker you know, so I'm fine with that. I changed my name from Brian Vitello to Brian Jones because I marry a lady named Mary Jones. Again, I should have electronic via filing. I should be able to get that information secure and sent to me immediately. Just like when I turn 18, I'm registered to draft. I'm registered to be drafted in the United States if there was a draft. I should be automatically enrolled in that. So if from the right, if you want this to go, this arcane Paleolithic way of voting that we got to go to polling stations and we got to show valid ID, that's fine. Then we need to make the valid ID process cleaner and better electronically, and we need 4 days to vote. Not 1, 4, because now we're going to have to do all the valid ID. We're not going to have mail-in voting. We're not going to have any of that. We're not going to reduce polling stations, which is being done. We're not going to federalize elections. It's going to be up to the states. The states could follow something from the Fed. For federal elections, the Fed is not involved. It's still separated by the states, which is in the Constitution. And sure, we can get rid of all that. I think it's silly, but fine. That's the argument you want to make. Then propose something to make it easier to vote, not harder. So you want valid ID, the right, MAGA especially, the orange mad king, the orange ass clown. Okay. It's because of all these illegals that are coming in there. Okay. So let's look at some quotes on that. Now, this is being argued, and it's not going to pass. There's not enough votes to get it passed, and the Republicans are losing control. And I think there's going to be a landslide in November because of the orange ass clown, MAGA, the orange mad king. We can go into all the reasons. Iran, illegal wars, illegal intrusions, no approval from Congress, reduced taxes on the rich, increased tariffs, lies, vitriol, and grift. But that being said, they'll get landslided in the House and probably the Senate in November. But let's come back to this. Again, there's this argument that there's so many illegals. There's so many people influencing this election. Now, remember, most of the people that work for Donald Trump, the orange ass clown, the orange mad king, still won't admit that he lost the 2020 election, which we proved legally. Even Bill Barr, his attorney general, went after it. The lies just keep going. Okay. So what did the president say? What does it mean when the president calls to nationalize the voting? President Trump was quoted, and this comes from, just so I can cite my source here, this comes from NPR, I know, National Public Radio, but this is exact what he said. President Orange Ass Clown, the Orange Mad King, a.k.a. Donald J. Trump. We should take over the voting in at least 15 places. The Republicans ought to nationalize the voting. So 15 places was what? The 15 places, this is on Dan John Bino's podcast, the 15 places were Democratic states, of course. Steve Bannon, we're going to have ICE surround the polls come November. So actually there's laws around where you can't be hindrance to a polling station, to a lot of things, to a courthouse, to Planned Parenthood. So that's what he says. So on this interview, one thing that's really important for people to know is that actually the president has no role in running elections in our country on fucking purpose. In our country, elections are run by the states and 10,000 local jurisdictions across the country. Going back to Steve Bannon's comments on his special, when he says we're going to have ICE agents surround the pools, what do we need to understand about a comment like that? This is a threat. It is prohibited for there to be any troops or armed federal agents of any sort anywhere near where voting or elections are being conducted. This is very clear federal law, both civil and criminal laws that prohibit intimidation of voters. So that's the first comment in terms of nationalizing. So let's just come back to we want to nationalize elections. So what does nationalize mean? We want to federalize them. And Trump wants it in his hands. That's not allowed. And that should never be allowed for a Democrat and Democrats have fought for it before, should never be allowed for a Democrat or a federal leader, Congress, or president, especially the Orange Mad King. Okay. So we want to do that. We want to put ICE agents. That's illegal. We'll stick with the federalization here for a little bit because I'm on that topic. Again, Donald Trump, the Republicans ought to nationalize the voting in federal elections. If states can't count the votes legally and honestly, he said, then somebody else should take over. Okay. I want to point that out. They want to nationalize the elections. They want they want IDs. The biggest reason they want IDs is because of all the illegals. Trump and the Orange Mad King and Steve Bannon, his orange-tinted Epstein leader, want to federalize because the states are not counting them correctly, right? Even though they repeatedly have gone through this, there's been lawsuits across the country and all proven out. So there is no big fucking conspiracy, QAnon, MAGA. But that being said, that's their argument for that. Okay. So we're going to get to this point. The point being is there's two prongs to this. There's the SAVE Act, which is we need IDs. We need to restrict voting as much as we can. We need people to go to the polls. We only want it to be on the Tuesday. We don't want to give more polling stations. We don't want to make anything electronic. We want to make it as difficult as we can. And not only that you have to pay for these things. So it's like a poll tax. Now you have to go out and pay for the passport or get the special ID or order a birth certificate, which you probably have to pay for every time you change your fucking name or get married or divorced or anything of like that nature. We haven't made that system clean. Doe didn't help with that. They disregarded all that. We can't make any of that secure. But what we want to do is we want to make it harder for you to vote, and we want to make it harder for you to get there on that one day because you got to make sure you have all these ducks in a row, even though you were born and raised here and lived your whole fucking life like myself. Right? And I can afford the passport, and I can afford the real ID, but make it simple. And if you're not, then no. If you are and you want to get rid of mail-in voting, which I'm completely for mail-in voting, then you need 4 fucking days to vote, or at a minimum 3. With national holidays, paid national holidays for Americans, for voters, for everybody for that matter. Okay, so let's talk about some of the facts. And the Heritage Foundation is one of the references. The Heritage Foundation being the Christian Nationalist Authoritarian Project 2025 white supremacists. They actually realized that they put out a poll. They put out a research that showed it's not applicable. Senator Dick Durbin, the president claims that the Save America Act is necessary to stop the scourge of non-citizen voting. So I looked at the data. The Bipartisan Policy Center analyzed the Conservative Heritage Foundation's election fraud database and found only 77 cases of non-citizens successfully casting ballots in American elections over, get this, 24 years, 77 cases. So should we root those out? Well, we'll come to that. 77 cases. 77 over 24 years. So the Heritage Foundation just proved that the whole push for the Save America Act, the SAVE Act, to save election integrity is for 1/10 of 1/10 of 1/10 of 1/10 of 1/10%. This is like the argument over trans people in sports. It's to distract you, right? It is to make it harder to vote with no improvement in the non-citizen voting, or 77 over 24 years. So what is that? 3.2 a year? We're going to save America. So nice name of the act. It's a bunch of horse shit. And you're not making improvements to the voting process. And you're trying to federalize it, or at least take some control over those elections by what? By election deniers, by J6ers, by Proud Boys, by Oath Keepers, by Stephen Millers, by Steve Bannons. Give me a fucking break. Now, if the Save America Act said we want to get rid of mail-in voting, we want 4 national holidays, we're going to do e-verify on passports. In fact, what we're going to do is automatically reissue every time you come up. It's going to be a minimal or non-fee. So it's not a poll tax, because we're not allowed a poll tax, because that was eliminated, because that was voter suppression, especially for blacks in the South. We're not going to make you pay to vote. Then, hey, maybe you have people on board, but that's not what you're doing. What you're doing is you're going to make it harder to vote for the 99.9999% of us that vote legally, because we're trying to root out the 0.0001%. Right. Okay. So, American Integration Council. A close review of the cases in Heritage database revealed that the organization had documented just 68 total cases. This says 68. What does 68 cases tell us? First, it demonstrates that proven cases of non-citizen voting are incredibly rare. Even an organization engaged in a major effort to document voter fraud produced fewer than 70. Now, this is another one. So they're going to be in the less than 100. 70 cases of non-citizens who voted in elections in the last 40 years. Given that over 1 billion votes have been cast over the period in thousands of elections, the incidence of proven non-citizen voting is below 0.0001%. This is in line with other analysis, so this isn't just random, carried out following recent elections. For example, a 2017 Brennan Center analysis of 42 jurisdictions, which tabulated 23.5 million votes in the 2016 election, where when Donald Trump won, now he didn't say that was fraud, found that non-citizens were referred for investigation in just 30 cases, or 0.0001%. Second, the data also tells us that proven cases of undocumented immigrants voting elections are even rarer. There was just 10 in 2016. What else does the data tell? Third, the data tells us that most cases of non-citizen voting involve lawful permitted residents, so they fuck up. People with green cards who have been in the community for years, many end up voting due to bad information given by government officials themselves. So make it fucking difficult to confuse it. So again, the numbers don't back up the vitriol. The numbers don't back up the conspiracy. The numbers don't back up the Orange Mad King and the there isn't a Republican Party, and MAGA's Mike Lee from Utah. Now we're going to show in Utah, they've showed zero. It's so concerning that in Utah, we had zero legal. We've had 77. I see where that's going. Again, it's not about destruction, motherfuckers. It's about construction. It's about change. Let's have mail-in voting, But if you want a better secure ID, then make that part at the Fed and state level easier. We all understand how fucked up the DMV is. It's because they don't have the staff. They don't have enough offices because we're not willing to pay for it. So make it electronic. Make it cleaner, secure, and everybody gets one. But we won't do that. We want to make everybody go to one poll, eliminate the polls, eliminate a lot of the polling stations, make it harder so that less people can vote. That's voter suppression, whether you like it or not. If the numbers were 10%, there would be nobody arguing. If the numbers were 1%, nobody would be arguing. If the numbers are 0.0001%, give me a fucking break. If you're an auditor, that doesn't even come in your audit. All right. Again, I'm just pulling articles from various sources, and the Heritage Foundation is the basis of it. So don't tell me I'm pulling leftist information. They pulled it. Dick Durbin, a Democratic senator, is using Heritage data to prove the point against what they're trying to prove, and Heritage is fighting for the same thing. All right. Time magazine. Trump keeps railing against non-citizen voting. Research shows it's extremely rare. In his State of the Union address, which is a couple nights before he invaded Iran and didn't tell us about it and did it without congressional authority or informing the public or any of our allies, the president urged lawmakers to pass the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, the Eligibility or Save America Act, a bill that will require voters to provide citizenship and photo identification to cast ballots in all 50 states, among other changes. Okay? This is the Orange Mad King. Perhaps most importantly, I'm asking you to approve the Save America Act to stop illegal aliens and others who are unpermitted persons from voting in our sacred American elections, Trump said. That cheating is rampant in our elections. It's rampant. It's rampant. In the past, Trump has basically claimed that thousands, if not millions, of undocumented immigrants voted against him in his presidential bids. Following the 2016 election, Trump claimed that between 3 and 5 million illegal votes caused him to lose the popular vote to Hillary Clinton. He still won the election because of the Electoral College, which is still kind of a fucked up process. We're not going to go down. When he lost the 2020 election to President Joe Biden, election to President Joe Biden 4 years later, he alleged that Biden won in key states due to tens of thousands of non-citizen votes. So we went from 3 to 5 million to tens of thousands. It's already illegal for non-citizens to vote in federal U.S. elections, however, and research and recent state investigations have shown what? That non-citizen registration and voting only occurs very rarely. 0.0001%. In Utah, so Mike Lee is a Republican representative or senator. He's an idiot. He's not intelligent. He's MAGA, 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 MAGA. Utah's election office, meanwhile, said last month that it had not discovered any cases of non-citizens casting ballots in the state after months of investigation. Now remember, red state, red rep senator, extremely conservative, believes in the myth of Jesus and Mormonism. We have not yet encountered anyone who voted illegally. Utah Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson, Republican, said about her office's review of the 2.1 million people on the state's voter rolls. Zero. But Mike, we gotta save America. Where does that leave us? It's simple. If you want an improvement in the ability to register with IDs, then you need improvement across the board, not just register with IDs. If you want to tell me that there is a huge problem with anything, right? Then don't give me conspiracy theories. Give me the truth. And what is the truth? The truth is that we're not even close to 1%. We're not even close to 0.1%. We're not even close to 1/100%. We're at 10,000%. That, my friends, is not significant enough to spend any time or money on. But I'll propose, again, a Save America Act improvement of voter rolls for everybody's security. Mail-in balloting is allowed. But we have a state, we don't federalize elections. We have a state that complies with some of these federal rules. We need valid IDs. So then we need better electronic valid ID. Try to get a fucking passport. It's a whole reservation system. It's not as bad as the DMV, but it's almost as bad as the DMV. Make that cheaper, cleaner, better, and more electronic. Real IDs, cheaper, cleaner, better, and electronic, and secure and encrypted. Okay? Driver's licenses, which don't qualify. So birth certificates, cleaner, cheaper, and more electronic. I changed my name. That should be part of the process. I shouldn't have to be in a fucking line at the DMV or the courthouse. Let's improve that. Let's limit we have the technology for it. We can do fucking fingerprint scans on everything, but we can't get a fucking driver's license without standing in a line. I get it, for sight and everything else. I'm not trying to improve the DMV. I'm trying to appease a very, 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 very tiny percent of people. You have mail-in voting. You have 2-day national holiday. You don't have to have 4 days if you have mail-in voting. If you don't have mail-in voting, you need 4 days. 2 weekends, first Saturday and Sunday of November, and then Monday and Tuesday are national holidays. And all the electronic things that go along with the ID process. If you have mail-in voting, you have Monday and Tuesday, you have more polling stations. You double the size of the polling stations countrywide. You say, well, that's too expensive. Well, we're spending $1.5 billion a day in Iran. I guarantee you about $1.5 billion we could get more polling stations. Our debt's running out of control based on our fucking debt, based on a lot of reasons. But we spend $1 billion paying a company that was going to put in wind, now not to put in wind. We're spending $400 million on the East Ballroom of the White House. They say it's privately funded. We'll see how that goes. But we can't afford more polling stations. We can't afford it to make it easier for Americans to vote, because that is the goal, to make it less easy. And I'm sure there's some Democrats that would like that too. But that's not the way we are, the way we should be. So the Save America Act is voter suppression based on the context of what it's put in place, because it's based on false premises that there is a bunch of illegals and a bunch of fucking people voting, and that there's a scam. This is all brought about by the whole idea. This is fucking playbook 1984. Keep repeating the lie until people 2 + 2 = 5. 2 + 2 = 5. Bullshit. 2 + 2 doesn't equal 5. No matter how much someone tells you that there's a bunch of fucking illegals voting in our elections, it's a fucking lie. 0.0001% based on the right wing. They aren't even a think tank anymore. The right wing Heritage Foundation. This isn't based on George Soros's data. So don't give me that shit. So we have a solution to all this. First of all, we don't Save America Act's dumb. If you want a better act, if you want something with more ID process, I just gave solutions that are completely easy to do. But nobody wants to do that, on the right especially, MAGA, because they want to limit people showing up to vote. So think about it. When you hear this Save America Act, they put really good names. The big, beautiful tax bill. Look at the tax bill. Is it beautiful? It's beautiful for some, especially the top 1%. Save America Act is saving some, especially in MAGA and restricted districts. So read. And I thank you for watching this episode of The Way Left.